So the world has obviously changed dramatically since the pandemic. What do you see as being the positives that it has brought, and what are the problems that we're still grappling with?
Jane, this was an event which we haven't witnessed since the Spanish flu for 200 years or thereabouts. And it was an eye-opener, if you'll pardon the pun, for all of us. We were ill-prepared for such a calamity. It was one of the worst things that have plagued us in many ways. And we were unprepared for it, and it exposed the human vulnerabilities. I mean, this was a defining moment of at least my lifetime, and maybe my predecessors and yours. And the sad part of it is that we were ill-prepared. And to answer your questions, I think we are better prepared now. The vaccinations were a stroke of genius, what they did, especially Pfizer and Moderna, and I would say to a lesser extent AstraZeneca. There are some side effects some people are suffering now, but it by and large it created more problems than solutions, and we are on a path to recovery. And I think the vaccinations, without that we would be still fighting this terrible pandemic that came upon us. There are economic side effects which are negatives, like the inflation. In this country alone we had 10-11% inflation, because after the pandemic was over, the governments had to, US governments under Biden, more noticeably they did that. They gave money out, which we call helicopter money, and that created inflation, and of course it created inflation all over the world, and people suffered a lot after the pandemic was over, and they are still suffering. I don't think we are quite done. I mean, every Bank of England is at 3.5% rates, whereas US is, inflation, US is more like 2.5% or a little bit higher, and going higher now because of other things which we might talk about during the course of this conversation. And so those are the negatives. Now, there were some positives that came out of the pandemic, and we have to address those. We all got accustomed to Zoom. We got talking to each other. Relationships, because we were so close to each other, we never saw our husbands or wives that often. We got to see them all day, all night, and that brought in some closures to problems, some closures to, unfortunately, to relationships. People realized what they were dealing with in more depth. More issues that they were not familiar with came about and got resolved one way or another. So those are the advantages. Then there were some technological advances made during that period, not by choice, but because we had to. We had to come up with some new technologies to get going, and that's why I think this AI has, it has come upon us a little bit faster than it should have, because people were thinking and working, and people started working from home, which they still want to. I am personally opposed to that. I don't think there's a better environment than working collaboratively in an office, but there are people who work from home and worked effectively. And you saw how the indexes like Dow, S&P, NASDAQ, FTSE, how it went down so much and then suddenly came up in a type of growth I have never seen in the stock market. That is, first they crashed and then they went up. Some people did quite well there, and some people predicted it. The advent of crypto, I think, is a function of this. The blockchain became more palpable because people became focused on that. At that time it was looked as a gamble, but it no longer is a gamble. So it wouldn't have happened as fast, I think, without the pandemic. So there are some positives, but more negatives, I think. And we have done well, the world has done well to recover from it, but we are not out of the woods as yet.
The Trump government has obviously changed the way the world works. The world order has been turned on its head. One of the biggest issues there is tariffs. So I wondered if you could talk to me specifically about the impact of tariffs and then more generally about globalisation and how we collaborate as a world.
Jane, I mean, it's absolutely, misused, and it's one of the, want of a better word, it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life, to impose tariffs where we are today. We took 75 years since post-World War II. We took those events that brought us to a lasting peace and growth and where we are today for granted. I remember giving an interview some time ago and I said we have taken it for granted and now it's coming to an end because of some reasons. And one of the reasons is globalization. I think that's a major reason why we started working collaboratively with the governments. The tariffs were no longer an issue. Yes, there are some imbalances. I mean, the US is taken advantage of sometimes, but they take advantage of other countries also. So it should be negotiated. These imbalances, trade imbalances should be negotiated, not unilateral tariff support, counter tariff support. This is not good for the economy of the world, for even the US. And if this is just a ploy, which we all hope it is, for Mr. Trump and his unique way of working to extract concessions from other countries, then I think we'll be okay, because the world economy was on a good path, US was on a very good path, and the last year, 2024, was excellent year in every respect, where the inflation came down dramatically, where the indexes grew by 20% or thereabouts. I mean, amazing year in terms of growth, especially in AI and biotech and other areas. That now is being threatened by these tariffs. I mean, it's most idiotic, because when you put tariffs on a country like China, they are not going to not retaliate. So ultimately, if you put a tariff on the government, and that, now look at the irony of this, the tariffs are put on China on the goods that, for ultimate manufacturing of goods that are bought by the American consumer. So the American consumer ends up paying for those tariffs. This is something that I don't know why Trump administration doesn't understand. And their Trump 1.0, same thing happened. That the inflation then again comes back, and this causes problems. And this is before the counter tariffs are put, what we call reciprocal tariffs. So it's a very bad idea. It takes away from what we have relied on and lived on in the globalized world, and now they are going a step further to put tariffs 200% on Scotland whiskey. I mean, this is absolute nonsense. It's a figure just taken out of the air. Why 200%? Now you think UK will stand back and not put tariffs back? Of course they will. France is already doing that for their champagnes and their wines, so this serves no one well. It doesn't serve the governments well. The taxation doesn't go up. Whatever little revenue they get because of the sales stop. Nobody's going to buy a bottle of wine that they paid £100 for 300 pounds. When I say nobody, very few people would. So whatever tariffs they get out of the few, it's idiotic. To me, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
You've described the current tech and AI revolution as the biggest change in 2 centuries. Where do you see Britain standing in that race?
Okay, so let's first talk about this revolution, and then I shall expand on where Britain is, or where I think Britain is. We have been through some very important revolutions. The last one before this AI revolution, I call it, was the dot-com one in 2000. Before that it was the steam engine, and before that it was the farmers revolution, which urbanized everything and made us what it is. All those were important revolutions and changed our life, the way we live it. But this revolution is going to change our way of life, in my opinion, in ways that nothing ever has. I believe if AI is handled properly, this is the fastest way we can end poverty. I'm not saying it's without a series of problems. It does have problems. There is a divide amongst the very bright that whether AI will destroy us or not, or whether it will help us. I happen to be the one on the side where I think it will help us immensely. And poverty, as we know it today, could end much faster because of AI. And because of the new developments in biotech and other areas such as this. So I think Britain is, in my opinion, behind the 8 ball, as we call it. We are not keeping up with it. Our new Prime Minister has come up with some suggestions. It remains to be seen how we follow up on it. I mean, while Mr. Starmer was Prime Minister Starmer was giving us this some ideas about how AI should be implemented in this country, France also had a conference which some of my staff attended, and they were talking about implementing these ideas, not just talking about it. So we are still talking about it in this country, and I think there's some people have to step in and start doing something. And then AI is still not where I think it is going to be very attractive for a company without huge amount of capital, like some of our big 7, magnificent 7 as we call them, have, because it doesn't give you ROI instantly. We are still at the service stage, and before we reach the product stage, which we are far from there, at least here, the profitability is not going to be there. So whoever invests in this better have it's done more in a philanthropic way. Let's get it started, let's get our country going. And the government has a role to play in this, deregulation, tax benefits. I've talked about this with you before. I think all this is part of the thing. The universities have a role to play to pinpoint their students to areas which they can benefit them and the country as a whole.
Obviously, there's a lot of debate about AI and AGI, artificial general intelligence. Where do you stand on what the difference between the two are?
So AGI is, to put it in simple terms, is all about machine learning. It's an extended form of machine learning. And we have been talking about machine learning for 5-10 years. I mean, I've been involved in machine learning in different ways. The difference now, Jane, it is with quantum computing, which means we can compute millions, if not billions times faster than what we used to be able to. As a simple example, it used to be all about ones and zeros. Now that whole algorithm has changed. The whole concept has changed. There are no ones and zeros. It's so fast. So if some information is held there, that's what AI is also about. AI is also about having more information available to them than our human brain can retain. So if, let's say, you catch a cold and you go to a doctor, your symptoms will be cross-sectioned across millions of people in milliseconds, and all the symptoms compared, the cures compared, and the doctor will have 5 choices in front of them. It's happening in the US now. Now, if that is health related, and That's what AGI is. And then what it does, it processes billions and billions of bytes of data, and then it brings it in microseconds together, and then the machine learns and learns to behave in the way it does it on its own. I mean, there's no human input from that. That's AGI. And then it feels the thing. It feels. One example I can give you, which was done by a Stanford professor, well-known professor. Her name is Fifi Lee. She's one of the best things. And what she tried to do was to make the machine see things and learn from it and decipher what's happening. The example she gives very famously and quite often is a cat comes and is on a table and comes to and kicks and sees a glass of milk and kicks the milk. Now, the machine has now learned through AI, AGI, how to, first of all, see that episode. Second of all, to decipher whether the cat was trying to drink the milk or whether it was mischievous or whether it was an accident. It can come to those conclusions. Can it understand like a human being would whether the cat did it intentionally and for what reasons? I mean, this is the difference between AI and AGI, to put it quite simply. The AGI can feel like it has emotional intelligence involved in it. It can think, it can learn, and then it can act. Now, this is not the type of artificial intelligence that ChatGPT or the ChatGPT basically gives you every answer you want, and it doesn't do anything beyond that at this moment. It still is way advanced as it compares to search or Google search, but it does nothing like AGI does. AGI thinks for you. It's like the human brain and improvises on itself. It goes and looks for information all over the world and then learns again, and the machine is learning and then acting upon it.
Both AI and robotics are developing at breakneck speed. How do we ensure that they're both serving humanity rather than causing damage?
I am more on the side of it will serve humanity, but there is a big if. And the big if is, can we regulate it now? And it cannot fall into bad actors' hands, Kim Jong-un and the likes. I don't want to name these bad players that we are now, because of the new way the politics is shaping up in everywhere in the world, including autocracy is on the rise, where nationalism is the reason for that. Of course, the political system has changed. Younger people see things life very differently. The institutions that were built since post-World War II are being diminished at the very least. And these are serious issues. And AI might help us, revive those things. So there's a divide between the people that AI will one day take over, especially if ASI comes in. ASI is artificial superintelligence. This would do things way beyond a human brain can do, and that's scary. I mean, there are pictures floating around with missiles flying all over the world with no human interactions and robots going into war. So this can, in my humble opinion, if ASI is not regulated and not contained, it is more dangerous than having a nuclear war.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about investment and entrepreneurship in Europe compared to the US.
This is no mystery. I mean, I use this as an example all the time. DAC, CAC, FTSE, and the other exchanges in America are very good indications of how we are doing in this country, because they represent companies, yes, public companies, but it's a good read of overall spectrum of people. DAC, CAC, and FTSE 13, 14 years ago was at 7,000, 8,000. FTSE was at 7,000, 8,000. Today it's at 7,000, 8,000 after 15 years. S&P was at 450. Today it's at 6,000 something. NASDAQ was at 1,800. It's 22,000. You know, it just was 22,000. Just come down a little bit. This is not. This is a fair indication of where we are. Dow was 3,000. It's at 40 some thousand now. So I don't need to tell you how we are doing in Europe and this thing. I mean, we love living in Europe. I used to joke around in one of my speeches. I said, I would love to make my products, if so long they're technical products, software products, in US, sell them in China, and spend my money in Europe. Because it's such a beautiful place to live in. But now, we are not doing so well, and now with these tariffs coming in, I think the global economy will go into a mild recession. I'm predicting it. I'm hoping I'm wrong. And were that to happen, Europe cannot take this hit. It's already doing quite poorly. Recently it has just come up a little bit, but we're not doing well. In Britain we have our own series of problems. Post-Brexit, we now are facing some exodus of some very rich people because of some government policies and taxation. I mean, some of us came here on this non-dom program, and then halfway through it you demolish it and you want to tax someone all over the world who's already paid taxes where he has made money. So there has to be an element of fairness, and if that continues to, if that doesn't reverse, then I'm sorry to say, I don't find much hope in our way forward, notwithstanding the fact that the Prime Minister has said we need to get into these artificial intelligence, biotech, which you talk about quite a bit and I do too. These are wonderful ideas, but who's going to implement them? And the youth needs to be, nurtured, cherished. We need to keep them close. They need people like us who can show them the way forward and give them some money, but also our experience, teach them what not to do. And so, we have to do that. And unfortunately, I don't see much of that happening, at least on the technical side.
You're passionate about esports. How do you see Britain competing in that? And are we just hyping this technology?
So, there was a time when people asked me this question all the time, which I think you're asking me also. Is there too much hype in esports? My answer was, there could be some hype, but there's also some facts that are irreversible, such as they say that there are over 1 billion people watching on Twitch and all these streaming things, watching our games on that. 1.2 billion is not a small amount, considering we are only 7-8 billion, whatever we are. So that's a large number, and it's essentially youth. And they are all, you have to go to these games, which I get to go once in a while as an owner. They are packed. These stadiums are packed. I have never seen any game where the stadium was not packed. And there are generally very young people there, but there are lots of them. So to answer your question more succinctly, I think the Saudi Arabian prince, who's a young man himself, quite wealthy, I think we can say that, no shortage of money, and is a gamer himself, has taken it upon himself and has had the foresight to put, rumor has it, $400+ billion and created a city where he's holding this EWC. Now that money comes to all the esports teams in the world. With that type of insertion of such money into the thing, everyone has opened their eyes, so to speak. It's now become so palpable, and everybody's competing to win in EWC. Whereas before it was, they would have these tournament championships, and then we would rely on sponsorships to come in like most football teams do. But now we have to win esports world championship. This is the tournament now, where you get a few $1 million if you win first place. You get a few million less if you win the second, you third, fourth, fifth. I mean, you are given prize money, and there are about 22 sports to date that they have announced for this upcoming, maybe more. And we are participating on 12, 13, 14 of those sports. It's being held in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, same place where it was held last year. My wife and I had the occasion to go there. It's absolutely stunning. So well, beautifully done. And this is going to add whatever fears we had of like it's similar to crypto, because crypto before Grace Line and this company BlackRock came in with their ETFs, people weren't sure whether it would last or not. Now nobody thinks about it that way, because big companies, BlackRock is one of the biggest companies in the world, is right behind it with an ETF, with institutional money going into there. So nobody questions survivals of Bitcoin.